Hi, I'm Kelly with Citracycles.ca, and I'm here with the Yunbike C1 commuter e-bike, and it's very lightweight, compact, and super inexpensive. It's available in two frame styles. We've got the low step here. You can see this actually comes down quite low. There's also another version that has the crossbar right across the top here. That version I think is available in graphite, and the step through is available in a few different colors, including the red here. I think there's a white and a mint as well. And so it's actually a very unique, very innovative, very attractive bike. This is the first time I've done a e-bike review inside, and part of the reason is I really wanted to emphasize for you how light this bike is. At 35 pounds, it makes it really easy to bring it into an office or up and down stairs, or if you live in an apartment. The compact size also means that you can very easily bring it inside. So if you're commuting to work and you want to bring it in, you can do that. You live in an apartment or you don't have a garage, or you need to put it in a car. This real compact design makes it very easy to bring it in somewhere. And so that's a really nice feature. At $12.99, it's an amazing value. And I'm going to step you through some of the things they did to get that price to that point. Obviously, we have a lot of other e-bikes that are available, much higher price points, so at somewhere along the way they had to make some decisions in order to bring the price as low as they have. So, for example, one of those things that they've done is this battery on here. This is 187 watt hours. Most of the e-bikes we sell are 400 and 500 watt hour batteries, so this is significantly less power available, and it's quite small. It's very unique. It's a nice size. You can see you can power on the bike from the battery here, and one of the things I love about this is the built-in lights. They're very bright, and you've got a few different modes here as well. If I press the power button again, you can see we've got a bit of a chasing mode there, and one more time. And we've got flashing. And then of course to power the bike off, I would just hold the power switch there. So the bike does come, the battery does come off the bike by use of a key, which is nice. You're not having to worry about somebody walking off with your battery. So you do need to disconnect it down here. You can see there's a little plug there. And here's a tip for you. If you're installing the battery, once you've taken it off, and even when you're taking it off, it's easier to plug this plug in when the battery is just a few centimeters away from the bottom here. Right now you can see the plug is hitting the bike frame here, and so it makes it hard to remove it. So I'm just going to put the key in here, turn that, and then I can actually just lift up on the battery here, which is a little bit difficult to do with one hand on the camera, but I'll give it a try. There we go. So you can see it comes off like that. It's a lot easier with two hands. Once I've removed it a few times, so it will get a little bit easier. And so you can see down here the plug has become disconnected. So when you're putting the battery back on, I would recommend connecting this plug before you slide the battery all the way down. It's going to be a little bit easier to do that when the battery's not all the way on. And so then I can just slide it right off the frame here. And you can see it's a nice compact size. It's not particularly heavy, and it has a USB port on it that you can use right at the top here. Here we go, with a flap to seal it while you're riding, that you can use to charge your phone or other device. So that's a nice, handy battery, fairly lightweight, and when you remove that, the bike becomes even lighter if you're carrying it around. So it definitely brings the weight down. And I'll just put the battery back on here. Camera down while I do that. Just put the plug in before I get it all the way down. There we go. And then push it the rest of the way. Good. And now you can see the battery is back on, and the bike display is activated there as well. So, going back to how they made this bike so affordable at $12.99, certainly a smaller battery, and you can get spares, so if you are looking to go a further distance, that's something that you can do, but that's definitely helped them to keep the price down. We also have a smaller motor, so this motor here is actually 180 watts. It peaks at 250 watts, and most of the bikes we carry are usually 350 to 500 watts. So that definitely tells you, you know, they've been able to save the money, bring the price down by using a little bit of a smaller motor. But it's surprisingly strong, even though it's 180 watts. And part of that is because with these 20-inch tires, and these are, you know, not the usual 26 or 700C or 27.5 or 29-inch tires, quite small at 20-inch, kind of like what you'd see on a BMX bike. The smaller tires actually allow that rear hub motor to give you more torque. So it's actually quite surprising in level 3 when I've ridden it to see how much power that you can get. It's also very quiet, which is nice, and of course the smaller motor means that it's lighter weight. Going back to the battery while I'm thinking of it, you'll get about 32 kilometers range is what they're suggesting for the battery, and it partly can achieve that range even with such a small size because the bike is so light, and it's a very efficient bike. And with that battery, if it gets completely empty, it's about 2.5 hours to charge from empty. So that's not too bad, and that's one of the advantages of a smaller battery like that. So we've got the smaller battery, we've got the smaller motor, and with that motor you are limited to 25 kilometers an hour. After that, the motor's gonna stop assisting you. And honestly, having ridden this bike, and if you want to see me riding it and learn more about the bike, check out my other video review where I do a road test on it. Once you start getting over 25 kilometers, because it's a fixed gear bike, you don't have any cassette here, you don't have a derailleur, it's just basically one speed. Because of that, once you hit about that 25, your legs are going to start spinning so fast to try to get any additional speed that it's going to be rather difficult. So on kind of a flat, 25 is kind of your maximum. And for what this bike is designed for, which is really a commuter bike, that works. You know, that for the most part is going to be the top speed that you need. And you could get a little bit quicker than that, but you are going to get tired because the motor does stop assisting at 25. Having said that, I have had it up to 45 kilometers an hour going down hills, and despite its compact size and these really narrow 20-inch tires here, I felt quite stable, didn't have any concerns about that speed. So I already mentioned that we've got the fixed speed, and so again, that helps them to bring the weight down, helps to bring the price down, and we can hit that $12.99 price by making some of those compromises. The tires, for example, these are literally no-name tires. Nowhere does it say on the tire the brand name. It doesn't even actually say the recommended tire pressure. So if you get this bike and you're wondering, Surface 604, who distributes it in North America, recommends 60 psi. They're kind of cool looking tires, and certainly you could replace them with something else if you needed to. But that again is, you know, one of the ways that they manage to bring the price down. We've got a rigid fork on the front here, which is not unusual on this style of bike, a commuter bike. You're not planning on going off-road, not on trails, and I was surprised. For being a rigid fork and the smaller tires like this, it really wasn't an uncomfortable bike to ride. It wasn't nearly as bumpy as I thought that it would be. The display is also fairly basic. You can see it is backlit, which is nice. See if I can get it to focus here for you. And basically you have your current speed, you have the current level of assist, and that's adjusted by the plus and minus buttons here. It isn't possible to turn the assist entirely off without turning the bike off. Once you get down to level 1, you can't go any lower than that. 4-segment indicator for your battery, and then down here you've got both a trip counter and a total odometer that kind of just cycles back and forth. There's also a throttle here. This activates a walk mode, so it'll move the bike along somewhere between 3 and 4 kilometers an hour for you. So for some reason you're needing to push your bike up a steep hill or set of stairs or something like that, then you can activate that and it gives you a little bit of a boost. It's not a throttle that you could use for riding the bike. And so basically to activate the motor, this bike does have a torque sensor, which is really nice. So basically it knows when you're pedaling and activates and deactivates when you stop pedaling. It's very responsive. On my test ride I was quite pleased with that. Also, going back to the display here, there is actually a USB port underneath here that you can use to charge your phone while you ride. So you've got the USB port on the battery that if you take the battery with you, you need to charge something. And you also have it up here on the bike. And that's handy because the stem design actually allows you to fairly easily mount a phone or GPS or anything like that that you'd want to put up there. We have some nice ergonomic grips. I don't believe they're locking grips, but again, at this price point, that's not something you would expect. The brakes is another good example of how they were able to bring the cost down. Now you'll notice that there's two cables from each of the brakes here. One of them is actually a motor inhibitor, so that means when you squeeze either of the brake levers, it's actually going to stop the motor, and so that's a nice safety feature. In addition, of course, to the torque sensor, which will stop the motor when you stop pedaling. Now, I should point out there's a little sticker here telling you to use the rear brake first. And this is, the bike, of course, was designed and assembled in Asia, and so the brake levers are reversed from what we're used to in North America. So you're going to find that the left brake lever over here squeezes the V-brakes on the rear tire, and the right one is for the front tire. And so that's something important to note, that you're always going to want to put more pressure on the left brake. Now, these are V-brakes. I'm not a huge fan of rim brakes myself. If you are going to go with rim brakes, hydraulic rim brakes are actually quite nice. One of the advantages of a rim brake is very little maintenance or adjustment is required, right? With a inexpensive mechanical disc brake, for example, those are a lot of work, really, to maintain them, because the cable's always stretching, you're having to adjust them, they get out of alignment, things are rubbing. So there is an advantage when you're going with a mechanical system like this one to going with the rim brake. Not only does it bring the cost down and the weight down, but really there's very little maintenance or adjustment that's required. They're just going to work, and you don't have to worry about really any maintenance other than occasionally replacing the pads here. So I understand why they've gone with the mechanical pull rim brakes. It does keep the price down, and for this style of bike, for the types of riding that you're likely to be doing on it, you know, that's an acceptable trade-off. Myself, on an e-bike, if I had a more powerful motor, for example, this one's the 180 watts, so that's not a big deal. But if I were off-roading, had a more powerful motor, I'd really want to go with a hydraulic brake, either hydraulic V-brake, rim brake, or ideally a hydraulic disc brake if you're doing, you know, off-roading. But obviously this bike isn't an off-road bike, and so their choice of going with a mechanical rim brake makes sense and will work. So, also on the front here, we have a very, very bright 4 LED light. And again, for what this bike is designed for city riding, for commuting, that's great, because you really want to make sure that you're seen. And that does run off of the bike battery, so you don't have to worry about replacing batteries or charging it or bringing it in. And it's built in, so you don't have to worry about somebody walking off with your lights, which is a nice thing to have as well. Now, if you're on Vancouver Island, or even if you're in Vancouver, we'll pick you up at the ferry terminal. This bike will come fully assembled. If you live anywhere else in Canada and would like us to ship it to you, we can do that. It's a very easy bike to assemble, and one of the cool things is that they've managed to use the same size hex key or Allen key for all of the bolts. So to assemble the bike, all you need to do is remove the top cap here, put the handlebars on, tighten the top cap up, tighten these two bolts here, put the seat post in, and install the pedals, and install the front wheel, and you're done. And it's actually, again, all of these bolts are the same size, so you can use the same Allen key to do that. So if you are assembling this box, you'll find, or assembling this bike out of a box, you will find that there'll be 2 bolts in the bottom of the box somewhere, and you basically just put those through the wheel here to tighten it up. And that's a good reminder for you that from time to time you want to check that all of the bolts through the wheel and everywhere else on the bike is nice and tight, just as a matter of maintenance. So the seat post is usually a fixed clamp, silver seat post. I put a quick release on there because we do have people that are coming by to try out the bike, and it's nice to be able to adjust that quickly. But if you're using this as a commuter bike, then it's nice to have that locked on there so nobody can walk off with your seat. The saddle is actually quite comfortable, a fair bit of cushion in there. It's moderately wide but not too wide, and of course that would be easy to change out along with the grips, and of course the pedals are your other touch point on the bike. These are actually quality pedals from Wellgo. They're metal, but they have kind of these metal grips here so that your feet aren't sliding off. I'm a little bit surprised at the choice of pedals. I would have thought that they maybe would have went with something a little softer on a kind of a city commuter bike. Of course, it's easy to change out, but they are good quality pedals. We also have a nice frosted chain guard on here as well. So again, for a city bike, it's nice because you're not having to worry about getting your clothes dirty riding this bike. You've got the chain guard that's built in there. We also have a reflector at the back here and reflectors on the tires, which is handy for visibility. Other accessories you could add to this bike would be a water bottle holder, and it's nice that you've got the bosses on there. A lot of times on an e-bike there isn't room for those, so it's nice that they've put those on there. So in addition to the toolkit required to assemble this bike in the box, there's also a Presta valve adapter, and that's really handy because these valves here are Presta style valves. And so here, I'll go to the rear one, which doesn't have the cap on it right now. Oop, there we go, came off. And so if you're not familiar with the Presta valve, you remove this, and then you need a special pump in order to inflate the tire, and then when you're done inflating, you can close that back up. So Surface 604 has actually included a Presta valve adapter. So you just thread this on, and then you can use any Schrader style pump, automotive pump, compressor, that sort of thing. So that was a nice added feature that they added to the box for this bike. So this is the Surface 604 Yunbike C1. And if you have questions about it or would like to try it out, head over to our website at citruscycles.ca, and you can find our toll-free number and our email address there, and we'd be happy to schedule an appointment with you to try it out. If you are looking for a very inexpensive, lightweight, compact commuter bike, you don't need to go long distances, you don't need a lot of power for hills, this is a great bike. If you've got a lot of hills on your way to work, you want to go a long distance, this really isn't the bike for you. If you want to go off-roading on lots of gravel trails or mountain biking, please don't take this bike there. That's not what it's for. But if you need a fun, compact, inexpensive, lightweight bike just to get you to work or to school, this is really a great choice to consider. As long as you're aware of some of the trade-offs in terms of the components that they've used, the size of the battery, the size of the motor, that sort of thing. And so if you have any other questions about it or any other e-bike, head on over to citruscycles.ca.